Truth of the matter is really that the protest singers really are, Edie Gourmet and
What's
Robert
she
Goulet and
protesting
Steve
about?
Lo.
Bob Dylan changed American music by transforming folk into poetry and rock into literature.
Before you can see the sky.
Born Robert Zimmerman in Hibbing, Minnesota, he absorbed everything from Grand Ole Opry broadcasts to Greenwich Village coffeehouses. Dylan won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2016, first musician ever awarded that honor. Throughout his 60-year career, Dylan has been generous discussing musicians who shaped his vision.
And he said, "Can't you sing some folk song like the Clancy Brothers do?"
From blues legends to country pioneers, from rock and roll rebels to folk storytellers, these artists gave Dylan his foundation. He called them his teachers and guiding lights. Here are 10 musicians Bob Dylan never skips. 10. Buddy Holly. Dylan saw Buddy Holly perform at Duluth Armory on January 31st, 1959, just 4 days before Holly's fatal plane crash.
Oh, my kissing, you don't know what you've been a missing, oh boy. When you're with me, oh boy.
Dylan was 17 years old. That concert changed everything for young Bobby Zimmerman. Holly showed that a kid from a small town could become a rock and roll star without losing authenticity.
Buddy played the music that I loved, the music I grew up on, country western, rock and roll, and rhythm and blues.
Holly wrote his own songs, wore glasses, and didn't try to be Elvis. He was a real person making real music. Dylan later said Holly's music had a profound impact on his decision to pursue a music career. Holly's acoustic style, blended with rock sensibility, influenced Dylan's approach to songwriting. Songs like That'll Be the Day and Peggy Sue demonstrated how simple melodies could carry emotional weight. Holly proved you didn't need big production to make great records. His tragic death at 22 made him legend, but his music gave Dylan a roadmap for a career that would last 6 decades. Holly's Crickets were a blueprint for self-contained rock bands that wrote, performed, and recorded their own material without outside interference. 9. Lead Belly. Lead Belly was a Louisiana-born blues and folk musician whose 12-string guitar and powerful voice influenced an entire generation of folk revival artists.
But I can think of Billy Day. Oh, Lord, I can think of Billy Day. Oh, Lord, I can think of Billy Day. Oh, me.
Born Huddie Ledbetter in 1888, he spent time in prison where he developed his musical style. His repertoire included work songs, prison songs, folk ballads, and blues numbers. Songs like Goodnight Irene, Midnight Special, and Cotton Fields became folk standards. Dylan discovered Lead Belly's recordings at University of Minnesota in 1959.
That's all, really. It doesn't boil down to anything more than that.
Lead Belly's ability to transform traditional material into something personal resonated deeply with young Dylan. His raw vocal delivery and storytelling approach showed Dylan that folk music could be powerful and authentic without polish. Lead Belly recorded for Library of Congress and later for commercial labels, preserving American folk traditions. His influence extended beyond Dylan to artists like Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie. Lead Belly died in 1949, but his music lived on through folk revival of the 1960s. His mastery of 12-string guitar created thunderous percussive sound that nobody else could replicate or match. 8. Odetta. Odetta Holmes was a folk singer whose powerful contralto voice and guitar playing made her queen of American folk music. Born in Birmingham, Alabama in 1930, she moved to Los Angeles where she studied music and began performing. Her recordings in the 1950s helped spark the folk revival movement. Dylan discovered her music while at University of Minnesota and credits her with inspiring him to trade electric guitar for acoustic.
Going on, anytime somebody really good comes along, it's like,
Odetta's interpretations of traditional folk songs, spirituals, and blues numbers showed Dylan that folk music could be a vehicle for artistic expression and social commentary. Her album, Odetta Sings Ballads and Blues, was particularly influential on young Dylan. She performed at March on Washington in 1963 and remained a civil rights activist throughout her life. Her dignity and power as a performer influenced not just Dylan, but Joan Baez, Janis Joplin, and countless others. Dylan said her voice could shake you to your foundations. Her commitment to social justice through song demonstrated how artists could use their platform to challenge injustice and inspire change in troubled times. 7. Little Richard. Little Richard was the original spirit that moved Dylan to do everything he would do. Born Richard Wayne Penniman in Macon, Georgia in 1932, Little Richard exploded onto the music scene in 1950s with wild piano playing, pompadour hairdo, and screaming vocals. Songs like Tutti Frutti, Long Tall Sally, and Good Golly, Miss Molly defined early rock and roll. Dylan heard Little Richard on radio as a teenager and was mesmerized by his energy and fearlessness. In high school, Dylan performed Little Richard covers with his band Golden Chords. When Little Richard died in 2020, Dylan wrote he was so grieved, calling Richard his shining star and guiding light back when he was only a little boy. Dylan got to hang out with Little Richard in his dressing room during European shows in the early 1990s. Richard was always generous, kind, and humble, still dynamite as performer and musician. His influence on Dylan's performance style was undeniable. Little Richard demolished boundaries between sacred and secular music, bringing gospel fervor to rock and roll with unmatched intensity and theatrical presence. 6. Elvis Presley. When Dylan first heard Elvis Presley's voice, he just knew he wasn't going to work for anybody and nobody was going to be his boss.
Well, you ain't never gonna ride behind your head, old friend. Yeah, nothing but...
Elvis opened the door for Dylan and the entire generation. Born in Tupelo, Mississippi in 1935, Elvis became king of rock and roll. His fusion of country, blues, and gospel created a new sound that changed everything. Dylan heard Hound Dog on radio as a child, and that moment was pivotal. He performed Elvis covers in high school bands. When Elvis died in 1977, Dylan couldn't speak for an entire week. He was really grieving and went over his whole life and childhood. Dylan said if it wasn't for Presley, he never would have gotten started. Bruce Springsteen later said, "Bob freed your mind the way Elvis freed your body." Elvis showed working-class kids they could become stars. His Sun Records recordings especially influenced Dylan's understanding of American music roots. Elvis broke down racial barriers in music by bringing black rhythm and blues to mainstream white audiences in ways that revolutionized popular culture forever. 5. Johnny Cash. Dylan called Johnny Cash the North Star. You could guide your ship by him, greatest of greats then and now.
And I'll walk out a wiser, weaker man.
Cash was truly what land and country is all about, the heart and soul of it personified. They met at Newport Folk Festival in 1964 and remained friends until Cash's death in 2003. Their 1969 Nashville recording sessions produced Girl from the North Country duet on Dylan's Nashville Skyline album. Cash covered It Ain't Me, Babe and other Dylan songs, while Dylan performed Cash's songs throughout his career. Cash's storytelling in songs like Folsom Prison Blues and I Walk the Line showed Dylan how country music could be poetic and authentic. Both men understood American music's roots in folk, country, and blues traditions. Cash supported Dylan when he went electric at Newport. Their friendship transcended music into deep mutual respect. Cash represented integrity and authenticity that Dylan admired throughout his life. Cash's deep baritone voice and spare arrangements proved that simplicity combined with emotional honesty could communicate more powerfully than elaborate production techniques. 4. Hank Williams. Hank Williams's voice went through Dylan like an electric rod. Dylan started writing songs after he heard Hank Williams.
To wander and stray, for straight is the gate and narrow the...
Even at a young age, Dylan identified with Williams's lonesome sound and honest lyrics. Williams was born in Alabama in 1923 and became a country music legend before dying at 29 in 1953. His songs like Your Cheatin' Heart, I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, and Hey Good Lookin' became American standards. Dylan learned what he called architectural forms of Hank Williams's country songs. Williams showed that a 3-minute song could contain an entire world of emotion. His ability to write from personal pain while making it universal influenced Dylan's songwriting approach. When Williams passed away, Dylan said it was like a great tree had fallen. In 2011, Dylan helped curate a project completing Williams's unfinished songs. Williams proved that country music could be as profound as any art form. Williams wrote with directness and clarity that cut straight to the human heart, eliminating unnecessary words and focusing on essential truths about love loss and loneliness. 3. Robert Johnson. Robert Johnson was a mysterious blues great who evoked a dark night of soul for Dylan.
I went to the crossroads, fell down on my knees.
Born in Mississippi in 1911, Johnson recorded only 29 songs before dying at 27 in 1938. Legend says he sold soul to the devil at Crossroads to gain mastery of guitar. Dylan discovered King of Delta Blues Singers compilation in 1961, and it changed his understanding of blues. Johnson's sparse, economical lyrical style connected with Dylan on a primordial level. Songs like Crossroad Blues, Love in Vain, and Hellhound on My Trail combined supernatural imagery with raw, emotional power. Johnson's ability to transform personal experience into mythic narratives influenced Dylan's own songwriting. His guitar technique and vocal delivery were unique and haunting. Dylan recognized that Johnson was rewriting earlier blues but didn't care because performance was everything. Johnson showed Dylan that blues could be poetry and poetry could be blues. Johnson's bottleneck slide guitar work created ghostly moaning sounds that seemed to come from another dimension beyond ordinary human experience and comprehension. 2. Woody Guthrie. Woody Guthrie was the true voice of American spirit for Dylan.
In the dead hours of night.
In 1960, Dylan borrowed a copy of Guthrie's autobiography Bound for Glory from a classmate and became instantly obsessed. He traveled to New York specifically to meet Guthrie, who was dying from Huntington's disease in New Jersey hospital. Dylan said to himself he was going to be Guthrie's greatest disciple. Guthrie gave Dylan a note saying, "I ain't dead yet." Dylan played him Song to Woody, which became one of only 2 originals on his debut album. Guthrie's songs had an infinite sweep of humanity in them. Born in Oklahoma in 1912, Guthrie wrote This Land Is Your Land, Pastures of Plenty, and hundreds of other songs. He traveled America during the Depression, documenting working people's struggles. His topical songwriting and social conscience directly influenced Dylan's protest songs. Guthrie's talking blues format, storytelling approach, and commitment to truth shaped Dylan's entire artistic vision. Dylan allegedly started speaking like Guthrie when he first arrived in Greenwich Village. Guthrie's guitar carried an inscription reading, "This machine kills fascists," demonstrating his belief that music could be a weapon against oppression and injustice. 1. Billie Holiday. Karen Dalton was Dylan's favorite singer because she had a voice like Billie Holiday and played guitar like Jimmy Reed. That comparison tells everything about how Dylan viewed Holiday's greatness.
But right and wrong don't matter.
Born Eleanor Fagan in 1915, Billie Holiday became one of the greatest jazz vocalists ever. Her ability to convey emotion through phrasing and timing was unmatched. Songs like Strange Fruit, God Bless the Child, and Lover Man showcased her interpretive genius. Holiday didn't have the biggest voice, but she had the most feelings. She could take a simple melody and transform it into a profound statement about love, loss, and survival. Dylan understood that Holiday's vocal style was about truth-telling, not technical perfection. Her troubled life and struggles with addiction gave her music authenticity that couldn't be faked. She died in 1959. But her influence on American singing remains immeasurable. Holiday showed Dylan that vulnerability could be strength in performance. She sang behind the beat with such deliberate restraint that every syllable carried the weight of lived experience and hard-won wisdom earned through suffering. These 10 musicians gave Dylan his education in American music, from Woody Guthrie's folk tales to Billie Holiday's jazz phrasing, from Little Richard's rock and roll fire to Robert Johnson's Delta blues. Each taught him something essential. Together, they built the foundation for the greatest songwriter of the 20th century.